Our guest today is it's one of the biggest personalities ever. So what's the song for our guest today?
Song for our guest today is probably really not that reflective of him. I just can't stop listening to this song. It's called Heat Wave by Cobra Man.
Never even heard of the artist.
Yeah, it's a kind of indie pop funk band. They got some dope ass songs.
Say it again. Heatwave by who?
The song's called Heat Wave by Cobra Man.
Cobra Man.
Cobra Man. It's kind of like 80s-ish. It's like 80s nostalgic, but like they're a new band.
Play a little bit of it?
Yeah, it's cool. Play a little bit Heat Wave.
You like the synth?
The origin?
Is this new or is this old?
New.
What? Ice Cold Company?
That's what I'm saying, bro.
Oh, that's nice.
This is fire.
That's great. I love that. Dum, 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 dum.
Or bass line?
Yeah.
I'm gonna send it to you.
Yo, that's fantastic. You guys are going to enjoy that on the playlist.
What is your movie of the week?
My movie of the week is a movie that you saw, and then my sister saw too, and I had to see it, and it was Iron Claw. Iron Claw with Zac Efron. Whoa, the guy has so much talent.
I was like so excited for him after that movie.
Me too.
You know what I mean? Like I know he's been through a lot, and he got casted as like the what's the
Baywatch?
Baywatch, but what are the movies where you singing all the time? Like
High School Musicals.
Yeah, all the musicals he was doing.
It was kind of pigeonholed him into like Disney
is
guy.
not a real actor.
He is a real actor,
bro. You go watch Iron Claw.
He's
gonna
incredible.
come out of there like you didn't even know Zac Efron could tap into that. Absolutely killed it.
That last
Jeremy
line
Allen
in the
White
movie,
killed it.
Iron Claw, incredible movie.
Go see
you
it.
have to go see it.
Go see Iron Claw.
So good.
So good.
Well, speaking of movies and shows, our guest today is a producer, a writer, a director,
a real mensch.
A real mensch.
If you love Entourage, How to Make It in America, or Ballers, you have this guy to thank for it.
Rob Weiss.
Testing. Did I say anything yet that would get me canceled? Here's the problem: is that like I won't watch myself or listen to myself. So I always had assistants do it, but then I really got to ask myself. I got to go, how much does this guy really want me to continue existing? You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
you can get some person, you say some crazy shit. They're like, nah, bro, I thought it was fantastic. I thought you were excellent. They just sabotage.
They want to see you burn.
You never
Falling
know,
out with
bro.
your assistant,
Listen,
paychecks late.
I watched Godfather Saturday. You know, it's like your enemies come at you in very strange ways.
Yes, they do.
Have you seen the newer cut of the third one?
No, I've not. You know what's so crazy? I've never seen Godfather 3. I've seen Godfather 1 and 2 a trillion times.
Yeah.
Don't watch the old cut.
Yeah, I don't want to see those characters that way. It felt very I don't know, it just didn't feel historic. Like the first two, you know, having seen them probably in my 20s, felt like I was seeing a piece of history, you know. And then when 3 came out, it felt like it was a piece of business. And
how much longer did 3 come out than 1 and 2?
Oh man, it's gotta be 20, 25 years. And I don't know. It just felt like I didn't want to ruin the experience of the first 2 for myself.
But if you do watch the third one, if you ever do, don't watch the old one because they didn't let Coppola release what he wanted to, and then 30 years later, Coppola released the one he wanted to release back then, and it's so much better.
For 3?
For 3.
Oh,
so
maybe.
like 2 years ago, Coppola's like, you know what? I'm gonna release the Godfather 3 I wanted to release that the studio at the time wouldn't let him. And it's
I'll
much
watch that
better.
version. You know, it's funny
so
because
much better.
Sometimes guys get really indulgent and they're like, oh, they're releasing the director's cut. And you watch it and you go like, nah, the executive cut was better. You know what I mean? It was tighter.
I bet they do that with a lot of movies, even like classic Dumb and Dumber, which I love.
Yeah.
You have like a window to recapture that energy. Like you have a 3-4 year window to follow up with the sequel. And if you don't, you try tapping back into those characters 25 years later, it's over, man. You can't do it. Like,
Wedding Crashers. Not redoing that now.
No.
Which?
Like Wedding Crashers. They're talking about
it'd be
doing a
weird.
second one. You
It'd
can't
be
do Wedding
weird.
Crashers again.
Yeah, I agree, man. Things age out. I'm trying to think what, I mean, you know, you look at all the Sly, like, you know, franchises, but they never had that kind of space between them. But they've gone that kind of distance.
Rambo, what,
you know
6? What was that? The Last Blood.
I
or
never really
whatever?
saw the Rambos, but I've seen mostly all the Rockies. So you know what I mean, and then the Creeds. But it's like they're constantly, you know.
Sly's doing it like every 5 years. He's updating it. He's coming back. But when you take a 20-year gap, like trying to go back and like recapture that magic you had,
Right.
you know, you say it ages
Well,
out.
that's
Like
crazy.
you just
Yeah,
can't do
man.
it.
Like I don't see like a lot of these guys older. You know?
No, right?
It's even like people like talk to me like, this thing's going, right? We're moving
Yeah,
on.
we're
Yeah.
just moving. Yeah,
We're good. People always talk to me about like an Entourage reboot, and I'm like, this guy's
Nah.
like 50 fucking years old now, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
nah.
not just the fact that, you know, the business has changed, the town has changed, and by that I mean culture.
Oh, could you make it again?
Well, that's the question, right? You go like, you're not making it the way we made it the first time. I mean, these guys aren't saying half the shit they said the first time. You know, they said some pretty out there stuff, you know? But whenever I think about that, or whenever somebody says, well, you know, the things they said, misogynistic, or they were, you know, the way they objectified women, I'm like, yo, that was Barack Obama's favorite show.
Right.
Barack Obama was on 60 motherfucking minutes.
Yeah.
Talking about, like, yeah, me and Michelle, Sunday nights, I'm watching Entourage, and I'm thinking about some of the dialogue we had in that show, and him laughing, and his wife's looking at him like, what the fuck are you
Me and
laughing at?
Michelle, we throw it on the television and love Johnny Drama.
Yeah.
Big fans.
Yeah, you know, I mean, look, it was, for the time, I think it was a really good reflection. I think, like, in a lot of ways, it's still true to what the town is, you know? It's just not true to the way the culture is, you know?
We've
And
talked
so
about
much
that,
of that has
too.
changed just by the very nature of having cell phones and social media and the way information is shared. Back then, it was like, we didn't have any of that shit.
We
Also,
talked
like-
about how the Hollywood has changed just in general with that. Like, it used to be the place where rock stars would go, and Hollywood was like fun. It's not really that way anymore. We got like
you had
TikTokers.
you had
and
real movie
everyone's got-
stars.
yeah.
You know, movie stars like Tom Cruise, the last real one. That's why. I mean, I get so pumped going to Tom Cruise movies because they don't make them like they don't have those anymore.
Yeah, it's
you know?
kind of it's kind of fucking nuts, but there's some great shit about it,
Yeah.
and some really bad shit about it. I think the great shit is the accessibility and the lack of gatekeepers needed, and the whole DIY aspect of creativity, where you can kind of make stuff and find your audience if there's an appetite for the content you're creating. I respect that. I did that. I went and made an indie movie in New York when people weren't even doing that shit, not to blow myself, but I did, you know? And it's like, I just did it on a
Talking about
big-
amongst friends.
yeah,
Yeah,
but I did it on a
yeah.
grander scale than a 10-second viral clip thing, but not on a grander scale in viewership, right? So I respect it because I love the hustle and I love that people could do it. What's bad about it, and maybe also kind of good in a way, is it really did destroy what was the image or illusion, if you will, of fame and like that aspiration to, you know, be the lead in movies. It still exists, but it's all feels so blurred now.
Yeah.
And you look at actors and you go, holy shit, they got like, I mean, there's actors I'm in talks with for projects that I think are superstars, potential, you know, down the road Oscar winners, and that their like social followings are substantially smaller than girls that I know at Equinox. You know?
See, that's one of the things that bugs me.
It's fucking crazy.
It is
man.
crazy.
That bugs
Yeah.
me with the acting thing because, truth to be told, I think I will win my Oscar someday. But a lot of the auditions and shit I get, I see the movie. I'm like, oh, I auditioned for that. I'm like, oh, who got that? Guy has 500,000 followers and no talent. So that is a thing.
But that's different. You see that, so that part of it. By the way, if those followers are real and the whole thing's not just some trumped up, you know, my buddy's motioning the hat. I think he wants me to turn it around. But I was trying to give a little hype to my boy, fucking Josh Stone's Fat Sal shit. You know what I mean? But I guess I did it.
No, you can
So I'll
keep-
go backwards. I don't like a
you can
fucking.
keep it however you want.
I got Joe over there
You're good.
telling me no. But that started. That started a long time ago. That actually started with Twitter. And I think it really was a big network television guest star marketing play because my ex-girlfriend who I live with, would be up for co-stars, guest stars, and they would go with the person with the higher social numbers because they know that person's going to go out there and be like, yo, check me out on CSI tonight or whatever the show was at the time, you know? So they just want the hype, right? Like, if you play with the numbers on your socials, you know, they're not going to do like a full investigation. Like, you'll wind up getting more roles
Yeah, beef your shit up, bro.
than the other people.
Yeah, I
Take
mean,
it to a
you
it's
cover.
just
just
go
true.
buy some.
Yeah.
Well, I think because like you said before, what'd you say you went? You went to Meisner, Stella Adler, right?
Yeah.
Well, right. So you're a purist, you know. Somebody got into your mind and body and soul, and they turned you into an artist, you know. And
It's a business.
in a lot of ways, unfortunately, look, I'm still a purist. Like I'm working on this MMA thing with Skydance. I have a co-writer, young co-writer that we co-created together. His name's Cassius Cargan. Doing an amazing job, brilliant guy. We're now really wrapping up the draft that we're getting ready to hand in. And I was explaining to him about, like, on this final stage, having done Entourage, Ballers, How to Make It America, and knowing that, like, we want to push these things forward, the further into the stages you get of writing the scripts, the more myopic you have to be. You have to look at every fucking line and look at it from every direction. What do they mean? And what are your options, you know? And where, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It
can you take this out and it still moves forward?
but it's just everything becomes so detail oriented the further into you get, and that's artistry, man. And there's a purity to it also, you know, like of like trying to keep the integrity of the scene, the integrity of the characters, and also look at it in a super analytic way, right? So you're using both sides of your brain. It's like, unfortunately, most of these guys you're dealing with now, you know, in the world, that they're not really using any of the brain. It's just a lot of hype, man.
Well, it's funny. I auditioned for so many bad things. I was like, I'm just gonna start writing my own shit.
Yeah.
So now I have 2 movies I'm making this year that I was like,
Great, man.
you read so many bad ones, you're like, I'll just make my own.
Bro, listen, that at the end of the day, man, that's the hustle. The hustle is you do what you can do on your own. But the reality is how much energy do you have to try to get somebody else to co-sign the future you want to have? That is exhausting, right?
Yeah,
and
it's
in
exhausting.
television, which is the format I want to do the most for multiple reasons, it is the hardest because I need permission every step of the way. I don't own a network, platform, streamer. I don't have any friends who have one. It'd be great if we all had one, right? I guess TikTok, right? But
Yeah.
I want to do things on a grander scale, meaning budgetary wise. I want to have bigger scale, you know, more scaled up shoots. And it's like I constantly have to go through the system. If I only wanted to make independent movies, I don't have to go through the system, right? All I need is money, right? That money buys me the talent, you know, or the best talent I could get for the money, depending on my schedule and the dollars I have, you know. Like Joe over there made 3 movies in the last few years as a producer, you know. So he got it done, and he came from hockey, you know.
Yeah, how
Not
did you,
necessarily the best segue into it, you know what I mean? But he knew rich guys, and he knew other filmmakers that needed dough, and you start, you know, introducing rich people to people who need money, and shit happens.
how did
know?
you make Amongst Friends? How did you bootstrap that?
That was purely the universe and the cosmos aligning to, you know, at the risk of sounding super hippie, dippy, flowery, you know. But it really was. The further I get away from it, the more I realize there's no reason that movie should have come together. We're talking 1991. Nobody was making movies. Like, it's not like that. The minute you said I'm making a movie and I'm shooting at 35 millimeter, people go, shut the fuck up. Like, it was an unbelievable thing. And I was inspired by like John Singleton and Boys in the Hood, and been in film school at Parsons. I had some issue at Parsons, and I left. And
You got
I
like
was
a fight, disagreement, or like?
Yeah, it was crazy, man. It was like we did some tech shoot, and it just kind of went haywire. They made me be like an actor, and the girl who was directing is like, okay, well, he owes you money, and you're collecting the money. And this is the scene. And I'm like, oh, I could do that. And I didn't like the guy. Like, the guy had made me feel bad on multiple occasions. He was like an older guy. And on the tech shoots, everybody has to do every job. you rotate around the room. So I was like a camera assistant on this older guy's shoot. And then we had to do this scene. And I don't know, like the only prop on the table was like a phone. So I kind of lightly took the phone cord and put it behind him. Like, yo, you're going to give me the money. He's like, I'm calling your boss. And I'm like, well, I'm going to choke you, man. Like, but I took it light, man, and I just kind of put it behind me. He's like, don't you fucking touch me, right? And then like he threw something, and I kicked the desk to get to him. My teacher's like, you save your violence for the streets. You're out. Like, you know,
And you got kicked out for
yeah,
that?
well, I got booted out of his class. I mean, they didn't throw me out of school. It wasn't like, it was Parsons School of Design, man. It wasn't like fucking Brown, you know what I mean? They'd have like a whole disciplinary board. I mean, that fucking school was crazy anyway. This is like the end of the 80s, like in the art scene, you know what I mean? It was a pretty wild
New
bunch
York.
of people. Yeah, Manhattan,
So like
man.
prime is like hip
Yeah,
hop's
you know,
on
like
its way.
you're in a design class, then you go down Washington Square, park and blow some rails, then head back, you know? Not me, but I'm just saying that was like the tone of the school was fucking bananas, man.
I feel like
You
that's
know,
how
so-
Hollywood used to be too. Fun and like.
I mean,
the
it was a
stores, like,
cool.
here in
Listen,
old
I
Hollywood.
loved New York in the '80s. Was the fucking bomb. Anyway, and get it out there. Oddly, what happened is we had snuck into a premiere in New York for this movie State of Grace, which I love, man. And it was directed by this guy Phil Joannou, and it's Sean Penn and Robin Wright and Gary Oldman and Ed Harris. If you guys have never seen this,
I haven't seen
it's
it.
actually hard to find. It's fucking awesome. It's the Irish Mob in Hell's Kitchen, but it was back in like 1990 or whenever it came out. Fucking genius, right? So we snuck into the premiere. The actor kid I was with was like all over Sean Penn, driving him crazy. He's like, hey, bro, I mean, bro, you gotta understand, we're only like 20 years old, 21 years old or whatever it is. He's like, hey, bro, you gotta let me be your protege. And Sean Penn's like, bro, I got enough problems, man. Like, that's what he said to him. He looked at the kid, he goes, bro, I got enough problems in my life, dude. I do not need a protege, right? So, and I met Phil Joannou, the director, and Phil had also made a movie, 3 O'Clock High. And I was like, bro, I want to come work for you. I want to be a PA. I want to learn this, that. And I was like, you know, I go to this film school. I just got thrown out of, right? And he's like, call my assistant, right? And he gives me a number. And I called the girl and I talked to her. And he was getting ready to make this movie, Final Analysis. Man, these movies are old school. With like Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger, I think, or
Analysis.
maybe something like, I think maybe that was the cast. I don't know. Maybe Eric Roberts or something. I don't know. I'm fucking tripping right now. I have no idea. But tripping on time. You know what I mean? How long ago this is? No, not time for how long the podcast is taking. Like how many years ago this is. I'm like, holy fuck, man. Like decades and decades have gone by. And I'm trying to recall shit. You know, so, but I called her and I said, look, I want to come work for Phil. Phil said I could possibly do this. And she said, we're shooting in San Francisco and we don't have a budget to bring you out. And I was like, well, yeah, maybe I'll pay. She's like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to direct. And she was like, well, why don't you just do what Phil did and direct something? Like, that's how you're going to become a director. Like, you're not coming here being a PA, it's not. So I was like, all right, cool, okay, yeah. So I sat down and I like on a typewriter, started to write a short film about like these kids from my area, which was kind of authentic. I mean, obviously the movie, if you see it, and it's on Amazon Prime now, so you can watch it. But like, if you see the movie, it's clearly like hyperbole. Like kids aren't randomly just killing each other back in like an affluent neighborhood. But they were fucking dying. So maybe not the way I shaded it, but it was happening, which was bananas. But a lot of like drug deals, weird shit was going on in that period. But I sat down and started to write this short, and like it just kept going and going and going. And I'm like, oh, I'm on page 40, and like I'm really not where I thought I'd be. And before I knew it, I had like this 130-page script, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna go make this movie. You know, and like the one way I've been able to explain how I was able to make the movie was by only saying I was too stupid to believe I couldn't make the movie. You know what I mean? I was so naive that I was like, I could do this. And because I was that naive,
You did.
shit just came together. Yeah, like had I known how insurmountable it really was, I never would have engaged. Like my partner in it, that kid that I was talking about, he had to get back for pilot season. He knew the money wasn't coming together. I had no money. My dad raised me like 40 grand from like a bunch of gamblers like that were like half street guys, wise guys. Like, you know, you're going to blow like 3 grand this weekend on games. Just blow it on my kid's movie project, right? And we'll shut them up forever,
That's
right?
so sick.
Right. So all these gangsters are throwing in money. All these guys are, here you go. You need 3 grand. There's 3 grand for you, right? And then like some of my friends, I remember we were out there shooting, man, and I ran out of money. We didn't have film, and my buddy Mike Rappaport, not the actor, a different Mike Rapp from New York, was like, called me up like, hey, bro, didn't you say you needed money for your movie? He was like, I got 5 grand for you. I goes like, holy shit, I just ran out of film. I'm sending somebody to get the 5 grand right now. You know what I mean? And like things would just come together, and we were able to shoot for a week or so off this like 50 that had come in. And we front loaded the best shit, right? And then I had 2 producers who had never produced anything. One went to Yale, Matt Blumberg, and then Mark Hirsch, which is hysterical because Matt Blumberg came in, he was like, I produced, he had like fucking, look like Jimmy Page, but he was like 20. He had crazy head Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. I know nobody who's going to watch your pod has any idea who the fuck Jimmy Page is, but he was one of the all-time greatest guitarists of Led Zeppelin, right? So, and he had like kind of long hair, and he's like, I produced hundreds of music videos, right? He's working for us for like 2 weeks. I'm like, who did you produce with music videos? Like, I lied. I didn't produce any music videos ever, right? The guy never like produced anything. And then there's this other kid walking around, and we had this production office in Long Island. It was my mother's old house, and she had moved into Manhattan, and she's like, yeah, you can use the house until I sell it. So. And like, you know, she hated my guts because by the time we wrapped the movie, we destroyed the entire house. But my mother's boyfriend was one of the leads in the movie, and like his career got a pop off of it, right?
Who's that?
This guy, Mike Arturi. He was like the old man's like right-hand guy. But he was like, after Sundance, like all the heads of UTA, I remember standing there with them, like, that guy's a TV star. He could have a TV show tomorrow, and he had a hard time navigating it. Look, he's like my stepfather. He's been my mother 35 years, you know? I mean, like, I'm not gonna like start to make comedy out of them, but like, you know, like he's family to me, and he's an incredibly, incredibly talented actor. But my mother's a talented person too. My mother was like a theater teacher, and my mother went to HB and Strasberg. Like, they're purists. They're theater people. Like, and I'll get into that in 2 seconds. But anyway, so I was using the production office. Another guy who was there, he was a Wharton graduate. But like, you understand, at this time, I'm like 22, I think, right? 23, when I'm getting ready to make this movie. And I'm like, I'm still impressed with people who went to like Yale and Wharton. I'm like, you went to fucking Wharton? Like, I barely got out of high school, you know what I mean? So it was like, and he was like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, and you're like our PA? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, nah, bro, I'm going to make you a producer, man. You know what I mean? I think you could do the job. So now these 2 guys who have never done it before, the 2 producers, and there was the IFP in New York, which is like the AFM here. It's the Independent Film Project. And it was, I think it's kind of like where you go when you do sales, shit like that. Printed up these flyers, Metropolitan, which was this movie which Stillman made, meets Goodfellas, come see, you know, footage, right? Dailies. And they were just spreading it out to everybody. And this guy who I had actually read all about in Premiere Magazine, all these different things, this guy, John Pearson, who was an indie legend, showed up to look at the dailies. And he's like, I want to meet the director, right? And Pearson had found, like, Spike Lee. He helped Spike raise the money, I believe, for She's Gotta Have It. He sold the Coen brothers' first movie. He sold Richard Linklater's first movie. He sold Roger and Me for Michael Moore. Kevin Smith, Clerks. Like, but Clerks he did the year after me. So he was kind of like, that was like a big deal. And I went out to dinner with him and the 2 producers. And he was like, look, I think you're going to be a household name. I have $5 million. I'm allowed to put in $500,000 into 10 projects. And I'm going to do your project. So he gave me $350 grand to finish my movie.
Whoa.
Got into Sundance. And I came out of Sundance, and it was, for me at that time, meteoric success, right? Which was another whole fucking thing because my brain went sideways. All of a sudden, I had a 3-picture deal at Universal. I'm in a bungalow, Redford's old bungalow on the lot. I got a deal at TriStar. I got a famous girlfriend. I'm living in like a mansion in the hills with her. you know, in her fucking mansion, by the way, not mine, you know, and like.
You went
just
from almost strangling somebody at Parsons to
Yeah, and I was living in at that
Sundance.
time. I was living in my dad's house with my dad and my stepmom. Like I was like, you know, I was like like a washed up club promoter at like 21. You know,
now you
It's
living the
like,
life.
yeah, I was out, but I was like freaked out. You know, I'm getting shot by Annie Leibovitz and Bruce Weber, and I'm the subject of a New York Times Sunday Arts and Leisure fucking profile. And people like, but like my brain was so crazy that if 99 people said, yo, you're the bomb, you're the second coming, and one person said, you're a fraud, I believe the one person said I was a fraud. Because I just didn't have any foundation for the good fortune that had come my way. Now, all these years later, having gone to therapy, being older and wiser, I know that I was fucking talented. You know what I mean? But I know it now. Yeah. When I was a kid, I'd be like, maybe I suck. Maybe it'll never happen again. And I walked myself out of shit or talked myself out of it because I was scared. The older you get, you know, the less fear you have of failure, because failure is inevitable, man. Yeah. Everybody fucking fails, you know? And that is the great disservice. That is the great disservice that the people around me and myself, I didn't know that at the time, but people I think that were closest to me should have been like, bro, everybody fails the second time, go fail. So anyway, I kind of like, my shit got all fucked up, and then Entourage brought me back. But
wait, so yeah, how did Entourage come into play? After
Amongst Friends, I had a green light on a movie. It took me like 2-3 years to get it ready, right? And it was called Milk Bar. And I should actually make it. Me and Steve Levinson joke about it, because despite the fact it was written about the 80s, in the mid-90s, it would fucking crush now, because it's basically about a bunch of guys running a nightclub, like these Long Island guys in New York. But it turns into just like chaos with mob guys, and it's comedy, and it's just funny, man. So I was getting ready to make that, and I was trying to cast it, and Savoy wound up going out of business. So, and at the time, I was pay or play, right? Which means like, even if you don't go to work, they're gonna pay you. So they laced me up with a lot of money. For a 26-year-old, I think they gave me like $850,000 or something, you know what I mean? So I was like, and the OJ trial was starting, and I'm like, well, I'm just gonna kick back and watch this shit for like a year or two, you know, and live off this money these guys gave me in the famous girl's house, you know, in the kitchen in a big armchair. That famous girl is Shannon Doherty, by the way. I mean, like I say, I love Shannon. We're friends, so I'm happy to, and I'm proud of that part of my past. So, but we had a pretty wild time because, you know, we were both kids. Me and Shannon were together. So she actually just mentioned me on her podcast. So I'm happy to mention her on yours, because I don't have a podcast. So, yeah, I kind of like just let a few years go by, because, you know, I was cashed up and I was kind of freaked out and I didn't know what I was going to do. And then I started doing this Iceberg Slim adaptation of the book Pimp for Mark Berg and Island and Quincy Jones. And ironically, I've now been attached to that project for 20 some odd years. I own the book. Like decades later, I bought the book with some investors' money. And we're actually putting another iteration of that project together again, with Kristen Verlinden writing and directing, and Jamie Foxx and Foxhole and Datari producing alongside me. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. But that then took a couple of years. So you know, somebody's choices, they really, I don't know how I'm trying to say what I'm trying to say, but time goes fucking fast. You know, you could turn around and go, holy shit, I haven't made a movie in 6 years. Somehow I was hot for like 4 years after I made that movie. And then like, it wasn't like I warmed up. It was like I went from like hot to like, he must be a heroin addict, like cold. Like, it was so extreme. There wasn't even like a middle zone. Like, well, maybe we'll work on it, maybe won't. And again, this could be my own interpretation of it. I don't think I was properly represented at the time either, because my agent was like exploding as an agent. So I think I became less important. So it wasn't necessarily like I was getting all the intel anyway. I could find out like he just did a bad job, and I go, oh, okay, that makes sense. But I felt like I was out of the game. And then it became like a real grind for like a good 4 years of like, just like maybe I'd sell a TV show, maybe somebody'd hire me. But I was like, I felt like I was going down and down in terms of the currency to be able to do something, you know, to get something made. And then Doug Ellen, who I had actually gone to high school with for a year, who had always been around when I was making Amongst Friends, he'd come to casting. And when I had my bungalow, I let him use it to cast one of his projects out of. So we were always around each other, and then he got that going, and he invited me to be on it, but I passed on it a couple times, you know, and then I was like broken, heavily in debt, and my girlfriend, a different girlfriend, not the actress girlfriend who was long gone, and, you know, well, this girl was an actress too, so fucking shocking, you know what I mean? So she really wanted me to do it, and like, I just, like, I had like a bad experience working with some friends on something else, and I just felt like I don't want to go to work with people I know, and, you know, and then she just convinced me to call my agent after like the second, third time I passed on it. Doug was like, all righty, good luck to you out there. And I was like, thanks, man, you know. I'll tell you something really funny. Like, he supposedly I said to him, like, the first time he called, I said, yo, we're going to need writers. I want you to come sit with me, Lev, and Larry Charles. Larry was like basically who they brought in to supervise Doug in season 1. Larry's a fucking genius. Did Seinfeld, Curb, directed Borat. He's a fucking maniac, but he's a genius. Come meet with me, Lev, Larry, watch the pilot, right? I'm like, all right, I'll come in this week. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm never going there. I don't want to do this, right? Calls me again. He's like, yo, you coming in? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm just a little busy. I'm writing some, I'll come in this week. I'm like, I'm not going in there. I don't want to put myself through this, you know? Doug starts asking people, he's like, what the fuck? Like, what's wrong with this guy? Like, honestly, does he have money that, like, somebody doesn't know about? Like, how's this guy surviving? About me, you know? And then, you know, he called me and I was like, look, bro, I just want to get back to Sundance, man. I just want to go make another indie movie and be back at Sundance. At this point, it's got to be like fucking 10 years since Amongst Friends. Like 10 years, the decade's gone by. And he's like, all righty, man. Like, I wish you luck, this and that. And I was like, all right. And I go out to the living room. My girlfriend's like all sullen, you know? Like, why don't you just ask Leslie Maskin? Leslie was my agent at UTA, and I was like, she's like, just ask her. And I called her, I'm like, Leslie, you know the show Entourage? She's like, yeah, it just got picked up by HBO. I go, this guy, they potentially want me to come on and be a writer on it. But I said, no, you know, I don't really want to do it. And she's like, she basically was just like, what the fuck is wrong with you, man? She's like, what, are you stupid? She's like, you have no career, motherfucker. You're ice cold. If you do this show, I'll get you movies. You'll get movies again. She's like, I just made a deal for Alan Taylor coming off Sex and the City to go make a feature. And I'm like, you did? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, I'll call you back. I literally, this is all true shit. But I've told this story before on other shit. And I think I've told this on DVDs with Wahlberg interviewing us. And so I called Doug back and I'm like, all right, I'm in. This is like 5 minutes after we just had this beautiful partying thing with like, I wish you the best of luck. He's like, what? I go, yeah, I just spoke to my agent. Yeah, I'm down, you know, I'll come in, blah, 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 blah. So now I go in, I'm watching the pilot, and Lev's like, you know, Steve Levinson is like one of my closest friends in the world. He's like throwing up, but at the time he wasn't, you know, he's just Mark's manager partner, and he was Doug's manager. Now he's been my manager too. I mean, sort of, you know, I guess, but he's one of the closest people in my life. And he's like throwing hard balls at me, and I'm just like, all right, bro, look, I'm here. You know what I mean? Let's not like try to get me to not be here. The money's in my pocket. Stop pulling it out. I don't remember like where my head was at. So anyway, Larry was dope, and he was just like, Doug, whatever you want. Then ironically, HBO decides they don't want me. So now, this is hysterical. So now I'm all gung-ho. I want this fucking show. Yeah. I want to get paid. I want to get back into the business. And HBO goes, no, we don't want them. They think I'm too dark because of Amongst Friends. Doug's like, Amongst Friends has some of the funniest shit ever in it. You need to go watch it. Rob's the funniest guy I know. So they say they'll meet with me, right? So now I'm kind of like fucking panicked. You know, I'm going in to meet with like these HBO executives, which as a network I have mad respect for. I think at this time I'm watching Sopranos and my girlfriend's watching Sex and the City, and it's pretty clear they're very cinematic. It was very sophisticated for TV, and I'd always grown up watching TV and been a fan of television from Taxi to Miami Vice, and like I just, you know, fucking loved boat when I was a kid. So like I was down to do TV. So anyway, like I'm like, before I go to the meeting and I'm nervous about it, I tell Doug I wrote up a whole list of things that I think would be cool on the show. And he's like, what? And I go, you know, and I'm like, you know, the guys go on a whitewater rafting trip like Deliverance. The guys go to the Playboy Mansion, which I pitched. And I said, you know, and I had a whole list of that. And I go, Turtle wants to be a samurai. He's like, what do you mean? I go, he's got like samurai stuff in his room, like Quentin Tarantino kind of vibe. And he's like, look, bro, I told him you're hysterical. All you have to do is just go in there, be cool. That's it. So I go, yeah, okay. So, you know, I'm fucking tripping. My girlfriend drives me to this meeting. I go up in the HBO tower at the time they were in Century City, like on the 600th floor of a building, you know what I mean? You're like, and I'm up in there, I'm like scared of heights. I'm like in a chair like this. And Sarah comes in and she's with Jada Miranda, who would later become like a really great collaborator and work with us on How to Make It in America. But both women, in all honesty, had their arms crossed and they're just looking at me like, hi. You know, and I'm like, oh, they're fucking miserable. They don't want to. I'm like, they don't want me here. Like, they really don't want me here. And so, you know, and I'm like in my seat, and I'm like, you know, I'm really anxious back then. You know, I popped out in New York, like, and part of what drove me to make Amongst Friends was I was dealing with so much anxiety. I had all that energy. So then when my career goes sideways, clearly the anxiety's back. So now I'm sitting there, like, kind of like writhing in the seat, like, you know, and they're like, so do you have any ideas for the show? And I go, well, actually, I do. And I have like a whole list of them, right? So I pull out this piece of paper that I'd read to Doug the night before. And I start going down the list of things. They're like, oh, great. Thank you so much. I'm like, oh, thanks. You know, thanks for having me. Okay. Bye-bye, right? That night, phone rings. And it's Doug and Lev. And like, I thought they were giggling, which was a really bad misinterpretation of the call, right? But basically, like, I'm like, yo, what's up? And they're like, Turtle wants to be a samurai? What are you, fucking stupid? Turtle wants to be a samurai? I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, Lev's like, yo, we almost had you the fucking job. Why did you have to go in there with the ideas? Doug's like, I told you not to tell them ideas. I told you not to give them the ideas. And I'm like, oh my God. So now I'm like fighting for this job that like 5 days before I didn't even want. And Lev's like, you need to go write 2 scenes for the show right now. And I go, they want to read 2 scenes? He goes, no, I do, because I think you're a fucking moron. So I go fucking write out these 2. And now I'm like sitting there, it's like fucking 2 a.m. I'm like, I can't believe I'm actually auditioning for this shit now. You know, this is like, what a turn of event, you know? So I go and I write these scenes, and I actually write a scene where the guys go to not Chateau, they go to Sunset Marquee, and it's dead, and they're like, Drama Turtle, like, yo, why is it dead in here? And like, Eric's like, because it's Yom Kippur. And Drama's like, oh, is that when they wear the little beanies on their head? Like, it was just fucking hysterical scene. And then, like, they run into, like, one of the guys from, like, Puddle of Mud, and they bring him to, like, a bungalow, and he gives Vince a gun. Like, this whole, like, but it was great. The shit was dope. And then they read it and loved it. And they were like, all right, we're getting you on the show. And then they had this meeting with Carolyn Strauss. After all this strife, they went in. Carolyn's like, we'd like you to hire these 2 cousins to come work. Doug's like, great, I want Rob Weiss. She's like, sure, you could have them. And it was done, and I went to work on the show, right? And I was like, in all honesty, I thought the show was going to be horrendous, even while working on it.
Really?
They were like, do you want to play the role of Billy Walsh? Rob Weiss, who hasn't directed a movie in a decade, hires Vince. I go, I don't want to be on the show. Like, I thought it was just, I was like, who's going to like this? And then, like, it blew up. And everybody liked
Billy
it.
Walsh?
Well,
Like,
they were like, that was like the thing, because I was so precious, you know, and like I had an opportunity at like a really solid career at a young age, and I just, you know, I was like, no, I'll never be able to make anything as good as my imagination. Now, obviously, I go, listen, just make whatever you fucking make and buy some real estate and call it a day if you have to, you know what I mean? That would be my advice to my younger self, you know? Yeah. Like, what are you, crazy? Get into the market now. Go make 3 action movies, like, and reinvent yourself 5 years later. Nobody's going to give a shit.
So you thought Entourage was going to be shit?
I didn't think, I was like, who's going to like this? Like, who's going to want to watch this? Man, and everybody was fucking freaking, man.
It's like the ultimate brotherhood.
I swear to God, like, I was at this place, Spider Room, with my girlfriend at the time, and she was like, it had just started airing, and she goes, the show is going to change your life. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's going to change your life. I'm like, no, it's not. And then I felt the tap on my back. It was a guy who, I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to be a dick, but it's a guy who's ridiculously plugged in, very wealthy guy, very high-level Hollywood guy, very high-level music guy. He was a guy I knew during my Amongst Friends days. He would have walked past me 99.9% of 100% of the times between Amongst Friends and this, and all of a sudden I get a tap on my shoulder. He's like, bro, congrats on the show. It's great. It says, and then I turned back to him. I was like, yeah, you might be right, actually. like I'm like, if guys like this are coming over to say what's up, you might be right. You know, the show's going to take off. So I get a call from Paramount. They basically want to talk to me about doing a movie with Usher, right? So now I go over there, and I get to a room, and it's literally like me and 5 women. And again, I'm really anxious, and I forgot who the main exec was, but she looks at me and she's like, Rob, baby, you don't have to pitch anything today. Today, we're pitching you. She's like, we want you to come do a movie, this, and that. And I was like, oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. I was like, all right, I'm back, motherfucker. So then I called my agent, you know, and I'm like, well, I'm obviously not going back to Entourage. I'm like, I did a season. We're going to go make movies. And again, she's like, what are you, fucking stupid? She's like, when you catch a wave in TV, you don't get off the wave, you ride the wave. So, and that's what I did. And I mean, I'm grateful that I did it, but it, you know, it was like an 8-year kind of thing. And then, you know, we went into How to Make It in America, then a brief hiatus, and I worked on a Hell's Angel movie. And then I went into Ballers for another 5 years. So, you know, last 4 years have been like, you know, the catch-up time of inactivity. At least within producing, but obviously I'm developing like crazy.
Was his character on Entourage based off of a real person?
Well, I think he was like
Ari
an amalgam, you know? So
yeah.
Mark has Steve Levinson as a business manager, but Eric Weinstein was like his day-to-day life manager, meaning when Mark goes on location, Eric goes, you know, and would organize stuff like that. So I think it was kind of like amalgam of the two of them. Well, I mean, I know the reason Doug wanted me to be first off, Doug was not, and I love Doug and I have the utmost respect for him, but Doug would agree. Doug was not like doing Rob Weiss a favor. Doug was not going like, oh, you know, Rob really needs a break right now and we could help hoist him back up. He wasn't thinking like that. He looked at me and he was like, Rob would be an asset telling a story about guys, because Amongst Friends was about friendship, and it was very real for the way guys were with each other and the way they spoke to each other. And I think that's what the expectation was that I would bring to the table for this. But I had also had this incredible Hollywood experience, right? And Doug would say, he would be like, Rob came out to Hollywood and he was Vince, and now he's drama. Right, so it was like I had actually experienced both sides of that coin, you know, which is crazy, but I did, and you know, there were definitely a lot of you know, things that I contributed to the show, and since I was the sole contributor to Amongst Friends, there's obviously going to be some kind of, you know, and we actually took Amongst Friends and made that 5 towns on Entourage.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, drama on 5 towns on Entourage does the same speech I did in Amongst Friends.
The one where
line
he's
by
walking and
line.
talking?
Yeah, he's walking and
The
talking.
walking,
I
talking
give
line.
that same speech in Amongst Friends. So, like, we did
They
a
got
lot
him
of
over
fun
there.
shit.
They got him over there.
Yeah. So that was my speech, and shit. I used to write Entourage in this place, Bourgeois Pig, in Hollywood, because I lived in a little tree house. I had my girlfriend and 3 dogs.
Bourgeois
there.
Pig is what changed my life in LA.
Right, so I used to sit there, bro, in the back cave thing or right up front, writing like drama and turtle dialogue, and I couldn't write without like basically saying it. So I'd be sitting there, be like, yeah, bro, you know, like I'm just doing it. People just like looking at me, you know what I mean? And I'm acting out the scenes as I'm doing it, but it became so fucking natural just because I'd done it so many times, you know?
Did you write the nunchucks and the fried boots line? Because that's one of my favorite lines in Entourage.
Maybe. What was
what are you
that?
gonna do with what are you gonna do with nunchucks, Drama? He goes, I want to conceal them in my fried boots.
No, I think that movie, The Day Trippers, had just come out, and I just watched it. So, The Day Fuckers. I don't remember. It was like, I don't remember the episode. I know Vince hooks up with some actress, but I think Turtle
They have a bet about
Or
who
drama.
can get
Isn't
laid.
it like Shayna Moakler? Like Shayna Moakler is like,
Yeah.
you'll
It's-
fit the suit, go get the suit or something.
Pick it up from this dry cleaner and then show up at my house.
Oh yeah, and then drama puts it on. Right.
Drama's like, if
Turtle
I'm gonna
can't do it.
lose this bet, I'm at least gonna have some sex.
Oh, that's
yeah,
right.
that's
I
what it
remember.
was, yeah.
I remember.
Oh, who could get laid? It was Drama or it was Turtle or E first, and then E like gets with I think Sloan that episode, and then Drama goes in and bangs the girl in the bunny outfit. It's a great episode.
Yeah,
it's such a good
hysterical,
one.
man. I think what was the other one I fucking loved? I wrote it during the strike, like the writers' strike. I didn't hand it in though, and we weren't supposed to even be writing, but it was the strike in '07 or something, and I wrote that Sweet 16 episode where they like
Yeah.
pay Vince. I always loved Fabulous Baker Boys, and that song was like a big song. The I Love You Baby song, the Frankie Valli song. So I put that in there and like Drama puking on the cake in the
that's
end.
my favorite. It's so good.
Bro, it's so fucking hysterical.
There's
man.
a few lines in Entourage that have like cemented it, and like I have 4 older sisters.
Yeah.
2 of them love Entourage, but we're in Joshua Tree, and my sister who did not watch Entourage,
Yeah.
we're leaving, and she goes, "The tree has spoken." And I was like, "You don't even know what that's
Yeah,
from."
yeah.
That's when they're leaving, and who in Entourage says that? I think it's
What's
Drama.
that, the Shroom episode
yeah,
or something?
yeah, Tree Trippers, and they
Yeah.
go, "The tree is." Drama goes, "The tree is spoken."
I think most people assume that the show is like about Mark Wahlberg and his like cronies and his
Well, I think that
homies.
was the jumping off point, right?
Yeah.
So, the idea was like they were all hanging out and they had said to Lev, I believe, like, yo, we should do a reality show about this crew. And Lev's like, yo, we should do it scripted. And they called Ari. And Ari's like, I'm calling HBO, right? And then Lev was repping Doug. And Doug had actually just written some samples for Curb, and Lev liked what he had read. So they looped Doug in, they took and sold it to HBO, and they spent a couple years developing it. But, I think there's a lot of business stuff drawn from Mark because of Lev, right? Lev's like, intimately involved in those dealings. But there was also stuff drawn from Leo and
Yeah.
Colin
guys are just pulling
Farrell,
from a
like
lot,
just everything that was going on in the town at the time,
Yeah.
That show had the best cameos out of any show ever.
Yeah, everybody we did cameos with, like we really worked with them to create the kind of experience they wanted. You know what I mean? There's no expectation that somebody's gonna come in and do a cameo and you're stuffing words in their mouth. Like even Sagget's thing was like, wow, man, God rest his soul. He wanted to do it. I think me and Doug wrote his cameo, and he came in to the office. He's like, guys, what is this? He's like, I don't want to be fucking Danny Tanner. Because we wrote it like
Full
he
House.
was like the nerdy neighbor.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want to be like a hoe chasing fucking da 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 da. Like totally different than the way you look at Bob Saget, you know? So we did that. It was hysterical. And he goes, yeah, he crushed it, obviously. He's like, I only got 2 house accounts when he's like at the brothel thing. He's like, I got 2 house accounts here in Nate Now's, Like he had the best shit. And the crazy thing is I watched the episode with the girl I was living with, the actress girl from Montreal, and she was devastated. Devastated. Like she was young at the time. She was early 20s probably at that time, early to mid 20s. She was like, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? She's like she didn't really grow up with a dad, She, like, her dad kind of left the house, and it was her and her brother and the mother. She's like, I didn't really have a dad. And, like, Danny Tanner was, like, my father figure that I grew up watching. And to see him like this is devastating to me.
Yeah.
Did people
Yeah,
ask to be on?
Yeah. Because you guys
Like
are getting
you guys
hot.
had a port. You guys
People
had
like
Tom
Kanye's on a
Brady,
plane.
Tom Brady, Kanye.
Yeah.
like
It's
No, we
yeah.
had some sick people. Like,
they
it's
ask
funny,
you
the
on?
Tom Brady one, I think, like, the Manning brothers were supposed to be playing golf in that scene, and they flaked the day before. And then somehow Mark's like, I'll jump in and I'll call Tom. But yeah, people wanted to be on.
that works
it's
so
like,
well with the Turtle because Turtle's a Giants fan.
Yeah.
You,
It worked
you
perfectly.
hate the
It
Patriots.
worked perfectly.
yeah.
That
No,
was
it
so
was
good.
I mean, people wanted to be on the show, and it was fun for people to be on the show.
The show is probably the biggest. It's the ultimate like bro guys show.
Yeah.
And
I
as it's
guess, yeah.
going on, was your life were you just going like this? Was everything for you, or was it like more money, more problems?
I mean, I got to be honest, bro. Like, I didn't, like, people always ask, like, man, was it like fun? And I try to explain to people that you didn't even know because there was no social media. So there was like, it was no Instagram. So it wasn't like people like putting up clips. So there's tons of Entourage shit on TikTok now. People send it to me all the time.
Yeah.
There was nothing back then. You didn't know who was watching. They'd be like, oh, yeah, 3 million people watching. You're like, all right, where are they? I don't know. It wasn't like people are stopping me on the streets going, hey, bro, you write? Like, they don't know who the fuck I am. You know what I mean? So it was like, you know, our lives were good. We were clearly successful. We were nominated for 6 Golden Globes across 6 years, 3 best comedies for Emmys and countless Writers Guild Awards and PGA Awards and DGA. We were always at like some function or something. So it was clearly like we were doing a good job. I was definitely back in the game, and opportunity was there pretty much to do what I want to do. But I was signing like multiple, you know, overalls with HBO as contracts were ending. And then I got How to Make It in America going while Entourage was going. So now I'm sitting there with 2 shows with my name on it, right? But I was still living in the same treehouse that I was in when I was broke and in debt. And I was still with the same girl that I was legally married to. You know, I told you guys before you started rolling shit. We don't need to get into the details of it. But, you know, I was still with her. And, you know, and like after we were done writing, I would go to the gym and then go home. I wouldn't go to set. Like people are like, oh, how crazy are those party scenes? I'm like, I never went to them.
Yeah,
I just didn't.
Was there any scenes that you wrote that were true stories from your own life?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of shit. There's so many fucking little things. In season 2, Steve Levinson and I wrote a Sundance episode, which people love, man. It's one of people's
Sundance
favorites.
kids.
Right. So what's so funny is Lev at that time, I think he wrote a little bit on one episode in season 1, but me and him locked up in my office to write together. And we basically wrote a whole episode, and he's like, no, it's shit. And I felt like it's kind of funny because, like, the dynamics are interesting, right? When you're working with friends and, like, Doug's stressed out and, like, sometimes, like, it could get a little toxic and stressful. But I knew if I wrote with Lev, Doug really couldn't give me any shit because Lev hired Doug. You know what I mean? So I think in a weird way, like, I felt like we were freer in this dynamic to create. So we wrote this script, and then near the end, I think Lev panicked, and he was like, no, it doesn't work. We got to throw this away. We got to start again. So we do this. We rewrite the whole script, give it to Doug. Doug's like, yeah, but I understand. Why would this happen? Why would that happen? And he's like, oh, well, we did do those in the first script. Hold on, don't finish reading, right? So we take the script back, then give him the first one we write, and he's like, yo, this thing's fucking sick. So, like, it was actually the first instincts were the better instincts, right? So I would say that was that, and it was funny, too, because even back then, Harvey Weinstein was such a powerful figure in the town that Doug was like, well, I mean, we can't really do this with Harvey Weinstein, man. I mean, are you fucking serious? Like, we'll be dead or something. And I was like, and I guess Mark and Harvey, and I don't know that I should be saying this. It might be out there already. I think Mark and Harvey had their own issue. Like, Mark and Lev and Harvey were not tight.
That bathroom scene is so
And
wild.
what happened with me, this guy, John Pearson, funded my movie, right? We didn't get on in the end either. And he wrote a book called Spike, Mike, Slackers, and Dykes. And he spent 35 pages, writes this book. I'm a chapter called Rob Weiss, Amongst Jerks, The Dark Side of Overnight Success. That's the chapter about me. And the guy shreds me for like 35 pages, right? So I call my agents, and I'm like, I'm suing this guy. And they're like, you can't sue. He's you'll never work again. I go, what are you talking about? They go, it's published by Miramax. That's Harvey Weinstein. You'll never work again. So I secretly hated Harvey too. Because I was like, yo, this fucking guy let somebody fucking publish some bullshit shit. Like, that's like, it was just all lies and bullshit, right? So when the opportunity came up at Sundance to do it and to hit back a little bit, I fucking went. I was like, fuck yeah. And Lev, Lev representing Team Lev and Mark were like, fuck yeah, right? So we did it. And I think that, and obviously we changed the name a little bit. But what was great is we went to Sundance to shoot, and we were standing outside the Egyptian in season 2, and there's all these people standing around watching a shoot, you know, at the festival. And Doug looks at me and he's like, remember what you said when I invited you on the show? And I was like, what? He goes, that you wanted to get back to Sundance. And he goes, well, you're back at Sundance. And I was like, I looked around and there's all these people like smiling, like, because they're digging the fucking show we're making. And I'm like, yeah, this is the way I should be at Sundance. I was like, fuck yeah, man, I'm okay with this, you know? But I love what we did. I guess the clever shit that we did. And I mean, I think like, you know, it's tricky because people would always say like, oh, you know, is Vince going to get the movie? Is he going to do the movie? Is he going to lose the movie? Because that was like kind of, what's that?
Talking about Aquaman?
All the movies,
all
they
the
would
movies,
be like, there's no season arcs other than is Vince doing the movie.
Right,
But the story differences and the slight differences are what's important, you know what I mean? And the dynamics and the relationships and those things, because, you know, and just being able to write that year after year and still keep it relevant and fresh is the cleverness, you know? But I would say some of the cleverness is settling the scores you had on the outside while doing the work on the inside, you know? But
The character development on that show was so good. Like where, like it's funny. I really like Vince in the first seasons, and then towards the middle, like drama just steals the
Well,
show.
I feel like Arya became more of the sole focus as the seasons went on. It was Vince and Ian, at least in the beginning, and then to Turtles arc, Drama's arc, but I don't know if anybody was expecting Piven to crush Arya the way he crushed it.
well, that's the thing is like, you know, I think Doug did. He wanted Pippen from day one, and he always knew Jeremy was the only guy who could really do that. At least, you know, the way he envisioned it, Doug. But HBO definitely did not see that.
I grew up loving How to Make It in America. It was my fucking show.
Yeah.
And I think me, like probably everybody else who watched, like, why weren't there more seasons? Like, what happened? Like, I loved it.
Well, I
Was it
mean,
too,
there
like,
were-
nuanced, or,
there
like,
was
what?
a lot of shit that transpired behind the scenes on How to
Okay.
Make It in America. So it was like there were a lot of personality issues, and there were a lot of fucking personalities on it.
I remember being so frustrated.
You know,
with
I
him
developed
returning.
that show with Ian Edelman, and Ian and I were not an organic team. Like, you know, we had not worked together. But the main ingredient that the show was missing when I got involved was an arcing drive, an engine. And at that time, you know, it was 2009. We were in the housing crisis, you know, money was drying up, and the question of whether or not people could get rich anymore and the American dream still being alive, the American dream, you know, was a viable question. So that's what that's how we reconceived it and sold it back to Carolyn Strauss, and she was like laying to that. So I wrote the pilot with Ian, and then it just became like a lot of issues, man.
Yeah.
It became a lot of issues over what stories we were telling, how we were telling them. You know, I led us through season one. And then after season one, you know, Ian really wanted to run the show. He created the show. It was based on his creation. I never tried to stake claim to that. And Mike Lombardo, who was running HBO Time, said, yo, we're going to let Ian run it. You know, and I was like, all right. And he was like, it'll sink or swim with him. And I was like, cool. And I just took my money and chilled the fuck out. And the show landed where it landed.
Yeah. Facts.
So, but I'm proud of what I did on it. I took it from concept to pilot to season one pickup to season two pickup. And then I stepped off.
Now, I got a little small cult.
Not to
following
make
people,
this all
man.
about me, but I am the guest on the podcast.
That's
So,
dope.
you
It's
know
a
what I
great
mean?
show. It was a
So
fun
you
show.
do want to, I guess you want to hear me. You could have Ian on and ask him his fucking side
Was
story.
that the same with the Ballers? How'd you get that off the ground? Like, how do you get
That
the
was
Rock?
Lev. Like, that's not even me. Levinson. And he'll fucking deny this. He said, oh, yeah, when you and Ian would be fighting in the room, like, I would be so inspired. I would go write Ballers in my office. And I'm like, I hate your fucking guts. You know? But if I said that, he said that right now, I go, I never said that. So maybe I misheard him. But no, Steve came to me one day. He goes, yo, I want you to read a script of this young writer. And I read it, and it was Ballers. But I had to read it in front of him. He's like, what do you think? I go, yo, I think he's a good writer. He swears that I said, he's good. He's like a young me, right? So he's like, yo, I think I'm going to get this show made. We're going to get this show made. Or meaning him. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I heard from somebody like, oh, did you read Lev's pilot that he wrote? And I called him. I'm like, bro, did you write that for both of you? He's like, yeah, I just didn't want to tell you because I want to get an honest read out of you and an opinion. And I'm like, all right. So Mark had worked with Dwayne and said, yo, you should get with my guy Lev. He's got something great. And I think HBO wanted Pete Berg to do the pilot. But even prior to the pilot, Lev was like, and at that time, after How to Make It, I'm like, I ain't showrunning shit. Like that job is fucking bananas. I'm gonna do it on my MMA thing. Should it go forward? Hell, and I can't wait. But it is like that's a fucking toxic job, you know? I mean, it just is. Like, you have so many personalities, you're listening to so many ideas, you're managing so much, you know, and at the end of the day, like, somebody half-asses it on a script, they're like, here you go, you're the one fixing it, you know? And it's like, it's a crazy gig. But he had, Lev had found like a showrunner for the show, and he's like, I'm gonna get into the room with him for a month. His name was Evan Riley, great dude. Evan had a friend, Steve Charlotte, and he goes, we're just going to spend a month in a room breaking stories. So if HBO, you know, to help HBO pick this up post-pilot, we'll tell them what we want to do with the show for the year. You know, and he's like, and I had been working on this Hell's Angel movie for Fox, and he's like, I know you have the time. Do you want to come in? And they were going to pay me like some great amount of money, or maybe it was a 10-week gig. I can't even remember, but it was a good amount of money. And I was like, all right, I'll come in and do it. And we wound up figuring out like season 1 of Ballers, the 4 of us, in like a couple weeks, like just figuring out what season 1 was. And then HBO was like, well, look, you could take a, you know, consulting producer credit and the money you just made, or you could stay on board as an EP and get paid your fees. And I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'm going to hang out for a minute over here with you guys. You know?
And The Rock was already attached?
Yeah, The Rock was on, and then Pete Berg got on to direct the pilot. And yeah, that was, I'll be honest, that was my favorite show to work on. Out of the 3 Balls, my
to be
favorite
honest,
show.
like, just because I come from a sports background, doing a sports show is very difficult. Especially if you're showing sports, which you guys didn't do a lot of, which was smart.
Well, no, we were between seasons. We were in the off season. The show was always set in the off
yeah,
season.
which is the best, because because in parallel, Stars had a show about basketball, and they're showing all these basketball scenes. I'm like, these motherfuckers can play basketball. Stop showing it. Like, you got to have real basketball players.
I'm gonna have the fights on the MMA show,
Yeah.
but the seasons will be about the build-ups, you know. But I feel like I could choreograph those pretty fucking good.
You can.
know
There's
what I
some
mean?
sports where you just either can do it or you can't.
Football's a little more complicated.
Yeah,
you know?
football is
There's a
complicated.
couple
Basketball is
more
extremely.
people, yeah.
You can tell if someone has a terrible jump shot.
Yeah.
You know, if they're dribbling the ball all goofy, like.
Well, that's like
work.
even back in the day with like Basketball Diaries, which my friend made. Like
Yeah.
everybody would just give shit to the actors that were in it. Mark could ball, but there were other guys in it that they were like, nah, they can't play basketball.
That's why Adam Sandler did a good job on Hustler.
It's definitely the best sports show that's been made.
Yeah.
So
Like,
no,
winning
I
time,
loved it
done.
because
Winning
I had
time
the
is-
most complete experience on it. Meaning, like I wrote a lot of them, I directed, I exec produced. I felt a greater connection to the work itself. You know,
When I think about Ballers, I think about John David Washington. And
Yeah,
like
he's
That
awesome.
started his career.
and like what he's doing
Yeah.
now. I mean, he's doing
Yeah.
Nolan movies.
Yeah.
He just did Spike Lee. I mean, I'm like,
Yeah.
dude's a superstar now. He just did Creator, which I enjoyed. I'm like, good for him. And you were, I mean, you were a part of someone trying to find his way, you know, not trying to use his dad's name and be a Nepo baby and all these things. And now,
yeah, he's not like that.
no,
at
he's
all,
no,
man.
he's not.
Yeah.
He's not. But he was trying to avoid it. You know what I mean? And, and you guys brought out.
He's
a
funny,
part of
man,
him.
because like I just remember again. It's already like 4 or 5 years ago, that show. I remember like talking to him about the scenes I'm directing and giving notes, and he just, you know, he's kind of just look at you and go, I think I know what you're talking about. And then like you're like, oh, maybe he's got it, maybe he's got it. But he's like, you know, that whole cast was fucking dope. But I remember just being there, fucking watching scenes and directing like Dwayne and Rob Corddry and Russell Brand in scenes. Like, you can think whatever you want about Russell Brand, but at the time I was like, looking at him like, this guy's fucking cool as shit, you know, with his ability to just like move around with dialogue.
Yeah. And Dwayne and The Rock's partner in that movie, the agent, his name was
Rob Corddry.
Like
He is
But I'm watching
so
these
funny.
3 guys
Yeah, he's
in
awesome.
scenes,
Rob
and you're
Corddry's
just
awesome.
He's so
like,
good.
I'm watching it going like, this is fucking dope, man.
Yeah, you
And
already
maybe
knew.
I'm like self-indulgent. I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid, but I loved it.
Changed The Rock's career, because right after Ballers, he was like big movies.
The Rock had a few things going on at the same time, and Ballers was one of them. And he caught crazy
was nuts.
win, man. Now
Yeah, we just didn't have him that long. Like, he only had a 4-year deal. I think he was only interested in doing 4 years on a show.
Yeah.
And then he gave us a 5th year to end the show properly. He was a great dude. I love working with that guy. You know, he's like,
People's champ.
yeah, he's a fucking, he's really the fucking dude you see. You
Yeah,
know
he's
what
real.
I mean?
Yeah, he's with it.
I mean, like, there was never anything weird. I remember, like,
Remember that Vin Diesel like Tyrese beef with him? They was talking like mad shit about The Rock. I'm like,
Yeah.
The Rock seemed like he gonna keep it 100 with you, like if you whether you like it or not.
No, he's solid cap, but I
Yeah.
mean, everybody's got their process, right? And everybody functions the way they function. Like, you know, I think they were bitching about DJ's schedule versus their schedule, or
Yeah.
you know, he was like, when he was on Ballers, he was juggling fucking 50 other things.
Facts.
You know what I mean? It's like, so, you know, if you guys sit around and, you know, be on DJ time a little bit more, that's just the name of the game, you know?
As a director,
So-
do you feel like you have to manage those egos and personalities the best you can?
There was really none of that, bro, on Ballers. I swear to God, like, I would fucking put everybody on blast. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like, there was none of it. Like, everybody was dope. Like, I'm trying to think. I don't think there was ever anything weird. I mean, even when I tell stories about Dwayne, I'm like, I had this shot at this concert hall I wanted to do at CSUN, and it was good. Dwayne was coming down this long spiral staircase, and it had this great cathedral kind of ceiling. And he was coming down. I was like shooting him low angle all the way down. And he's like, how many steps? And I'm like, no, you go down the whole thing. And he's like, I'm not going down this whole thing. And I go, why not? And he's like, look at the steps. And I look, and the steps are like this. And he's like, look at my feet. And his feet are like that. And I go, oh, all right, yeah, man. I go, yo, we're gonna take 5 minutes to figure out how to restage this, reblock it, and how I'm gonna shoot it, you know. But he was like, he's just fucking cool, man.
That's
He was a
dope.
cool dude, you know.
Oh, yeah.
But I think the first 2 years I didn't direct, and I never went to Miami. I just wrote and then fucked off and kept working on my Hell's Angel project, which never got made. Then season 3, I started directing. We moved the show to LA. I got to spend more time with the cast, work with them, work closer with Dwayne, 3 and 4 and 5. But in season 5, like, the mandate was really just to get him in and out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he's gonna show up, fucking move him to his mark, have him run the shit, and then get him out. You know?
But why didn't the Hell's Angels one go?
So, well, the Hell's Angels one just didn't go because Fox didn't want to make it, and there's so much money against it because Tony Scott had been developing it for years before I got on board it, and he had like 5 of the biggest writers write drafts, and he bought all the IP. So when Fox, after 2 years of paying me like next to nothing, me and my partner on the project, Jeff Santo, they paid us like nothing to write it. I did it out of labor of love, and the person who found me was actually Sonny Bogger, who is the patriarch of the Hells Angels. And, you know, I have bikes. I haven't ridden in a long time, but I love the culture. And I felt like as a brotherhood, I understood the culture, you know, and I understood how these guys find each other and, you know, and like, so I wanted to explore that. And when Fox 2000 didn't want to make it, I was like, great, just give me back the rights. And they were like, sure, you just got to, you know, get it and turn around, and there's like 12 million against it. I'm like, what? So it was like staggering
Damn.
numbers against it. And there's no way to get that back. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now Disney probably owns it. I mean, they have even less of a purpose to have that. So maybe there's some way to get it out, but
There's that new one coming out, the
right, the
Bike Riders.
well, that's
looks
based
weird.
on the Outlaws. That was a book with the Outlaws,
That's
but
such
they
a
changed the
bad
name.
title, in my opinion.
Yeah, the Bike
The
Riders.
Bike Riders. What?
I mean, are you serious? I think it's like
You
fucking.
got a deck of you got a deck
yeah,
of
it feels
cards
like
in
that
your
movie
back tire.
breaking away or something.
The trailer,
It's-
the
dude.
trailer alone bugs me. I can barely get through the trailer. There's something about it.
Bike
Well,
Riders.
they found a way to turn it, I think, into like some kind of romantic thing, and they have great actors in it. So, and actors who are stars also. So, I mean,
Yeah,
maybe they'll
Hardy.
do so, yeah.
Hardy's
But also the
fucking
kid,
great.
Austin
And
Butler.
Butler.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
especially
it'll be dope, you know, I'm sure, but it's not. I mean, my thing, as crazy as it seems, was not super hard edge. You would think Hell's Angels, oh, these guys are gonna do something that's like Goodfellas, and it wasn't like that. It was more guilty pleasure. The greasers of the 50s, which is similar to the bike riders. They were greasers in the 50s, in the 60s in Northern California. They were running with all the Jerry Garcias and Allen Ginsbergs and all the hippies and counterculture movement. Hell's Angels were around for all that. That's how that shit happened at Altamont, where the guy got stabbed, right? And then into the 70s, it became a little more drugs, gangstery, a little more shit started to happen in the 70s. So we kind of explored like these 3 decades in the script, and we did it with Sonny, and he was happy with it. But like,
I would love to see a Sons of Anarchy movie, or
I never saw Sons of Anarchy,
a Hell's Angel movie.
bro. I think that
I'm
movie,
obsessed with that stuff.
globally would have fucking crushed. That culture globally is huge.
It still would right now if they made it.
Yeah, we got to try to fucking get it out of there at some point.
Could you just write something else? Like,
Well, first off, nobody
use
can
it.
use the words Hell's Angels. It's trademarked. This was voted on by every chapter in the world because it was based on Sonny's book. So they were like, we'll allow one movie to be made about the Hell's Angels. Sonny's story, right? Sonny was like, quote unquote, known, well, is AKA Chief. He was the guy who had the vision for expansion to take the Hell's Angels global. And, you know, they at least from what I hear, they would still honor that they said that movie could be made. But nobody else is making a fucking movie with the title Hell's Angels or with the name Hell's Angels in it, unless, you know, they want to go to every single fucking clubhouse in the world and get permission.
And that movie
you know,
was
let me tell you
titled
something, bro. The first time I met Sonny was at a funeral for a fallen member. And I went to this thing with a stunt guy who had introduced me to Sonny. He's the one who connected us. And it's me and like 300 Hell's Angels. And I'm sitting there meeting presidents from all over the country. And they're like, yo, you're gonna, you know, you do right by the club with this movie. And I'm like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm shaking hands with these guys. I'm like, I look like I'm fucking 2. Like every one of these guys, these are the most fucking savage men. They're monsters, bro. Like, nobody's showing up at a clubhouse going like, you know, hey, man, I want to make a movie. I mean, maybe, but I don't know. I loved it. I love being around them. I have mad respect for them. Let me say this way, too. I've known people in other clubs also, and I have much love for the culture. That's all I'm going to say. And even when I was making this movie, it was a Hell's Angels story, and it was to honor Sonny in the club. But it really, in my eyes, is it's honoring the culture, right? So
Maybe someday.
Yeah, we do a playlist every week.
yeah. Well, what do you think I should listen to, bro? Don't you feel like you know me now?
I had
The Weekend? Should it be The Weekend, bro? Is that what you think?
no. I was thinking
No, I'm
like
kidding, I'm joking, bro.
mine was like Slick Rigger KRS-One. You know, like
I'm
mid
I'm
80s.
gonna go. You know what, bro? Just because I'm coming off the combo with the Hell's Angels, I'm gonna talk about what I was listening to today at the gym. Yeah, I was listening to like Stones today. I was listening to like Give Me Shelter and Tumbling Dice, which we used in Entourage. So and Waiting on a Friend.
That's my Painted Black
So
is my moto song.
and I was listening to some Chili Peppers. I'm a big Chili Peppers fan.
Okay.
Today wasn't a hip hop day at the gym, but I fuck with hip hop. You know what I mean? But I'm not like a one artist. Like I'm never like a complete fan. I mean, obviously like Jay-Z and like, you know, a lot of fucking Kanye shit I fuck with, but you know, not anymore since he hates me, you know, for being Hebrew. No, I'm joking. I'm only kidding, man. I'm joking. But you know, I'm more like for hip hop. For me, it's more about tracks. You know what I mean? Or specific albums. Like it's not.
Well, I guess
There's
I
not
was
one
saying,
artist where I'm like, yo, I fuck with everything they do because I find there's just a lot of hit and miss in hip hop, personally, in my opinion. But
Well, I just figured mid 80s, you in New York, that's like the peak
Beastie
of
Boys. Well, for me,
I mean,
like growing up,
hip hop New York was
love
like
the Beastie Boys, man. They gave me a track from Amongst Friends. They let me use Brass Monkey, man. I actually went and hung out with Mike Diamond and thanked him for that. He seemed unaware that he ever gave me that. Chili Peppers gave me a track too. They let me use Coulda Live for Amongst Friends. Beasties I love. Fucking LL Cool J I loved. DMC, I loved. Fucking, I was friends with some of the Fat Boys. They were this group in the '80s in New York. They were cool as shit. Probably the pretty commercial hip hop cats. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's gonna be a good playlist.
Not like the underground guys. You got to get Venner on here to talk about the Slick Ricks and the fucking.
Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, you got to get him to come do all the like the deep talk. You know, I'm a radio station guy, man. I'm not like.
That's how I am
fucking,
too. Like a band that I like for instance, lately I've always been a big Metallica guy, but I'll just go Metallica radio, and then
Yeah.
whatever's on Metallica radio.
Yeah, it's great, man. I like
love.
Metallica too. I'm a little all over the place, man. You know what I mean? Like in terms of my musical tastes. You know what I mean? I like electronic too. I have friends who are DJs. I think they make some cool shit. I'm in the gym. I just want to feel fucking charged. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's it.
That's how I am.
Like I just want to feel like I want to run through a wall. If I
I'll-
don't feel that way, it's a waste.
Today when I was at the gym, it was Slipknot.
Yeah.
Slipknot radio, and
Yeah, we got a dip, bro. It's fucking, dude. This is like a 4-hour thing, man. It's, it's not even a podcast. It's a limited series. Hey, I want to thank you
Like,
guys
whoa.
for having me, man. I
thank
was
you,
looking
man.
for
Yeah,
a reason
thank
to
you,
go to
man.
Pasadena and drag my friends. This was fun, man.
yeah, thank you so much for coming in.
was
we really
fun.
appreciate it.